The books you won't put down. Grab the House of Lazenberry series by author Daniel Webb. Since his controversial interview at the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast, the books can't stay on the shelf. Grab the series, The House of Lazenberry, The House of Lazenberry 1970H, and The House of Lazenberry, A Time in the Hill. Link in the description box.
Why haven't y'all tried miracle food yet?
Miracle food.
Mega food.
Miracle food.
Miracle food.
Miracle food.
Miracle food.
Miracle food.
Miracle food.
Please support your Black businesses and support your health. This is a tool to genuinely heal people. It's through the roof. I feel like I'm low-key levitating in this bitch. This should be in your cabinets.
I want the story told about how Mr. Cosby got in this situation, why it happened, and what this is all about. And it's mainly about pictures, because that's the only evidence.
Yeah, we got to talk about that, definitely.
Yeah, that's the crazy part. Let's get into that. Okay, so we start hearing the news that Mr. Cosby could be potentially put in prison for things that happened decades ago, and then we start unraveling the things, and Bill Cosby, his legacy begins to get tarnished. Where were you, and what's your first point of action when you start seeing these things happen?
2014, fall of 2014, he was putting his art collection on loan with the Smithsonian, and we were all in D.C., and I set up several interviews for him to do, Gwen Ifill and Roland Martin. So he did those interviews, and David Brokaw, who had been with him for 40 years, David Dad, was Mr. Cosby's agent, the great Norman Brokaw, who was the chairman of William Morris, who got Cosby, the Cosby Show, and all of that. Right. David Cosby sits down with the AP, Associated Press, and with him and Mrs. Cosby, you remember, and they brought up the allegations. And he said, sir, you'll be so kind, I would like for you to destroy that, asking that question. And he was trying to protect his wife, like any man would. If first of all, why are you bringing up allegations in front of my wife? Why were you bringing up, that's petty, for that goes against any code, You don't confront me by no other woman in front of my wife, no matter what. Right. And that's what he was saying. He, you could do this to me, but not her. And when he saw that predicament, I always said that was the setup, because David left him there. The role of the publicist, when you see the question going in a direction, you step in front of it and you take the hit. You take the bullet for your client, and you step in front and say, no, the interview's done. He left him sitting there like a lame duck. And it just took a life of its own, man. They use that moment because this art collection, one of the largest African-American art collections in the world, and the only way you were able to get to see it, you have to be invited to the homes. And they wanted the world, especially they wanted to inspire Black people to start collecting art and start looking at the arts in any art form, and start, finding ways to own the arts, our work, our body of work. Because now, white people want our body of work. They want to own our music. They want to own our paintings, those type of things. So that was the purpose of it. And then they gave the Smithsonian, I think approximately maybe like $10 million. And we had a gala that night hosted by Sam Jackson, a concert afterwards by Sheila E., but it would not go away. And Mr. Cosby kept calling. He said, what's your thoughts? And I said, look, you got to go out here. Already started parading women out, if you remember. And the women never said anything. They just read a script. And I said, Mr. C, I got something. We could do it. I got something that'll defeat this right now. It will go away. We're going to parade you out with female friends, and you're not going to sit there, and they're going to just talk about you, the man that they know. Man, these white attorneys, they were like, no. They're like, Bill, why are you listening to him? This is how they would talk to him. Why are you listening to him? It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's going to go away. It's going to go away. Let you don't say nothing. I said, but his silence is going to be guilty.
Yeah.
He got to say something, but hey, you're leaning on the lawyers. Yeah. And Marty Singer, who represents the Kardashians, Tom Cruise, all the elites in Hollywood, that's his attorney. So, of course, Marty's telling him it's going to go away, so you believe it. And I never forget on CNN, on Reliable, the show Reliable Solutions or something, where Brian Stelter, this guy, Bob Huber, who was a writer for Philly Magazine, he said, do not let Ferguson, Mike Brown, take Bill Cosby out the news. When he was able to say that about a black kid being murdered in the streets, don't let the holidays and Ferguson take Bill Cosby out the news. You knew then it wasn't going anywhere. Wow. And we had comedy shows. Shows were being canceled everywhere. And Mr. Cosby was just phenomenal because he started just calling people. He was like, hey, I got your money in escrow. I'm going to send it back to you. I'm going to cancel the show myself. And he just started giving money back. He's like, I said, but he's like, don't worry, man. He said, let's let these people off the hook. And he just started giving all the money back. He said, Andrew, you have to pay me up front to do a show, but I never touch the money until I do the show and the show's done. He's because if I got sick or anything happened, I don't want to have to say, I don't have your money. And now artists can say, no, you booked me. I booked on that date. I'm keeping the money. Mm-hmm. He won't do that. And they had contracts that said if they canceled anything, that he gets to keep the money. He just called them up in the venues and he said, no, I'm giving you the money back. And, it took a life of its own because they paraded. It never stopped every week. Sometimes 3 days out the week, Gloria Allred was parading women out. Then she does an interview in Los Angeles Times saying, Bill Cosby, give me $100 million and it will all stop, go away. No more women. Mrs. Cosby said, she's not getting a dime. And that's when we knew it was on. And that's when I knew, I said to him, the attorney, Marty, called me up and I knew I was being set up. And he said, I need you to get social media people, influencers, to go on social media and start talking about this. We're going to pay you. We're going to send you, a couple of $100,000 and it's going to come through me. I said, no, why would I do it? I'll let it come through you. It's your idea. Right. Makes sense. Right. And so this was on a Tuesday, man. And that I made sure all of the influencers, I found somebody in Vegas, LA, New York, and I made sure that they put everything in writing and copy Marty on the emails. So that Thursday come, he gets one of Cosby's attorneys on the phone, Jack Schmidt. He's like, Andrew has to go. He has to be fired immediately. And I was like, for what? He said, you went out and got social media influencers and nobody told you to.
He set you up.
And I had the emails, though.
Okay.
I had all of the emails. And I typed what he told me as he was telling me. And that saved me. And that's when I knew that I said, look, man, they're coming after him. And then he had to do a deposition with Allred in Boston. And this is 2015 for this civil case we just had in Santa Monica 3 weeks ago. And Marty walks in with Gloria Allred. They were acting like they hated each other.
Right.
Like they despised each other. And next thing I know, I said, they took a break. I said, let me go in the back hall. We're in this building, and I go in the back hall, and that's when I called Marty and Gloria on the back hall. He said, look, we're going to keep playing this, and I'm going to get him to settle. And I told Mr. Cosby, and the rest is history. That day he said, Andrew, when we get back to the hotel, he said, he's totally blind now. And he said, I'm going to leave Marty in the room, but I want him to turn off the lights. Because that's what Ray Charles used to do. Ray Charles would tell him, Ray Charles shaved in a dark room. He always tell that story. And Ray Charles, even when he fought a manager, he made him turn the lights off and he'll whoop him. And, and Cosby said, Marty and there, so I left him in the room and he said, hey, Marty, turn off the lights. Next thing I know, I see Marty running down the hallway. And Cosby couldn't get at him, but he sent the message, okay? Right. And that's when I knew. I said, man, I can't guarantee you anything, but if you just hand it over to me, everything. I said, let me vet the attorneys. Let me just do it all. Private investigators, let me do it all. Let me cultivate relationships with the media. I'll go live in New York for whatever time. Just give me everything. And I promise you'll get to see that the ocean is blue. And you'll get to see a little bit to the bottom of the ocean, even though there's no bottom. But you'll get to see some clarity in your life. And he did do that. But, no one ever saw this criminal charges coming. We never saw that coming. And when this district attorney ran that campaign ad, that Willie Horton style ad, because he had been out campaigning, going to black churches, but never brought up Bill Cosby. Right. He just said that, hey, I'm going to make the laws fair. I understand this racial profile. I understand this the justice system, how it's unfair to black people. That was his campaign platform when he went to speak at churches and community groups. He never uttered Bill Cosby's name. And but when we saw that ad, and we saw that he got a significant amount of money from Comcast on NBC. And we always say that my thing is that NBC stands for no Bill Cosby. Because he tried to purchase NBC.
Yeah, I remember.
And so we just never saw. If somebody had asked me at the height of the allegations, do you see Bill Cosby going to prison? I was, never.
Right.
But going through that trial, man, I knew then, that 2017 trial, I knew that I was behind the scenes still. You just saw me walking in with him, guiding him, and just behind the scenes.
Right.
And it was something in me, and he said, Andrew, my story got to be told. And I need somebody to tell my story. And we were sitting in, he called it his suite. It was just a conference room inside the courthouse. And he was like, this is my dressing room. And he said, look, man, you can do it. Just go tell my story. And go tell what you're watching. You're watching it happen in the courtroom. And he was like, you're doing it behind the scenes. Just go out here now and talk about it. And I was able to go talk about it. And I brought some life to it, to the point where found out that the jurors were sequestered, because this jury came out of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and they were sequestered the first trial in 2017, but found out that they were going to Target in the middle of the night, outings at the zoo, reading newspapers. And I said, you know what, people are listening, they are watching it. And that's when I found out family members were telling the jurors, like, hey, you got to check this guy out. This guy's putting some stuff out here. And then, like I said, you have to, in this line of work, man, if you think you're going to go live in some high-rise, bougie situation, and that's where you're going to win at, you might as well just cut your losses, man, and give up this profession. Because it don't work that way.
Right.
You got to go and hang out in the streets, man, and get with the real people. Get with the street committee. Get with the people who know where the truth is at, and they know who's doing what, and they're connected to people, even connected to jurors. And I found out that the janitor, he was listening to everything. And the janitor heard the judge come in when they had come back with a not guilty verdict. The judge made them go back in and start deliberating again.
So the jury said not guilty. The judge said nah.
The judge said no. Judge O'Neill was like, no. Man. Go back and deliberate more. And you, hey man, you take care of people, okay? You got, that's when you have, because it's a dirty game. It's not. Yeah. It's not a clean game. You know, I might wear the suit and tie and whatever and all, but this is a gutter game. It's a street game. And when they come after now in cases, man, I don't care if you're not a famous person. You have already been dragged through social media because somebody's going to talk about a case, believe it or not. Cases now, people we've never heard of, we hear about these cases, and now we pass this judgment. And like I said, God judges us, so I don't have a problem with being judged because we have judges. I just have a problem with people being overtly critical, you know. And when I found that out, I said, nope, he's not going to win on this game. I started calling the judge out. I started calling his wife out, who were a professor at University of Pennsylvania, who was the one that got Mr. Cosby's honorary degrees rescinded. The judge should have excused himself. He should have recused himself. Mm-hmm. He sat over his own recusal motion. I'm denying my own motion.
Wow.
Then he started calling me out in the courtroom. Yeah, Andrew Wyatt is saying this about me. It was all personal. And I knew then they had to fix in that. But, man, those jurors, they deliberated for 50 plus hours. It was the longest deliberation in the history of Montgomery County. And they came back with a hung jury. We left in that week, beginning of the week. We had to come back on a Saturday. They said the jury's hung. And I had promised Mr. Cosby. I said, look, I went to the King of Prussia Mall, and I went to the Rolex store. I said, man, I want to buy me a Rolex. You know, I want to get you out of it. I said, look, man, I want to keep it gangster some way.
Right.
So I'm getting something. I got to do something for myself. Right. And I went, he said, man, Rolex ain't good enough, man. I said, but I want to get you a hung jury. He said, that Rolex ain't good enough, man. He said, they was the sponsor of I Spy the Cosby Show every season. The cats got Rolexes. And he was like, that, you know, hey, ain't good enough for you, man. And then we got the hung jury. And then he called me up on my birthday. He said, man, I'm blind. And he gave me his watch.
Oh, wow.
So, and it's gangster.
Yeah.
It's a boogery. And it was a 2001 edition that he won at Sotheby's auction house. So, so it kept it gangster. And I told him, I said, man, whenever I'm not with you, I will always be holding your arm and you will always be with me. Powerful. And so, and I wear it every day, man. And it keeps me on that foundation of being who I am and being true to myself, but also understanding, man, this fight is bigger than him now. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not about Bill Cosby. It's about every black man in this country. And they have this formula. And, you know, when we got that one, I never forget the judge over all the judges, when they said hung jury, his name is Andrew Delarici. He stood in the back of the courtroom and he looked at Judge O'Neill and the district attorney. He said, normally you'll say, well, let me go rethink this and see if we're going to be able to retry this case. He made him say right then, no, we're going to retry the case. And man, 2018 comes. Mm-hmm. I get Mesereau, I hire him. And I like Tom because I've been knowing Tom for some years through an attorney who passed away, Charles Savaggio, an Italian guy. Charles handled every criminal and drug case for every black person and got them off in Birmingham, Alabama. So what Tom would do, Tom would fly in from L.A. and all black people cases in L.A., him and Charles, for 20 years, they did them for free.
Wow.
Any black person that was charged criminally that they worked on together, they did it all for free in Birmingham, Alabama for 20 years.
Great.
And I knew Tom's body of work. And so I said, we got to get Mesereau. But Mesereau, we talk almost twice a week, and we had dinner in L.A. And I always tell him the biggest mistake he made, he thought he can try this case like Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson lived in Santa Clara. Mr. Cosby didn't live in Montgomery County. He's a Philly guy.
Right.
If it was in Philly like Meek Mill, yeah, you get the jury from Philly. Mesereau said, no, I'm going to get the jury from Montgomery County. Well, the judge was voted in. He was popular. The district attorney won there. And Mesereau wouldn't listen. I said, no, let the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court pick someone like Erie, Pennsylvania, because those small coal mining towns, they don't believe in this type of stuff, man. Right. You know, and they got side pieces. They know what this game is all about.
Right.
And like I say, Mr. Cosby ain't no perfect man.
Right.
It was the infidelity there. Yeah, it was.
It's not against the law, though.
You know, that's a part of the
Right.
industry, man. Mrs. Cosby would pick him up from the Playboy Mansion.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
It's not like, you know, he's this perfect character, a human being who has not stepped outside of his marriage. But that was between them. That's between the husband and wife. That has nothing to do with the public or any family members.
Absolutely.
But in 2018, man, I knew the fix was in. That jury, man, they all knew the judge. They all heard about the case. They were sequestered. We had a Muslim on the jury, and a black male, an older black female, and they all voted. And I knew. We went to lunch, man, and it was a feeling I got, and I said, man, we're not gonna win this one,
Man.
and I just knew it. It was just. I could watch the jurors, and they looked at him in disgust.
Yeah.
Many of them when he got up and walked. And, you know, he's blind if he heard something loud because now his hearing is heightened because of the blindness. And he'll jump. And he just had to use, he's 80 years old, man. He had to use the bathroom. And he wanted them to take a break. He was like, I want to take a pee break. And the jurors frowned on that. But you know, looking at them, man, and I could tell you, I knew we wasn't gonna win that case. No matter what I did, I knew. And he kept saying, he said, Andrew, he said, I don't think we're gonna get this one, man. He said, because Mesereau should have listened to you and not get this jury from Montgomery County. He said, I don't think we're gonna get it. He said, but I'm preparing myself. He said, they're gonna make me do time because they gotta make an example out of me.
He knew it, man.
He knew it. He said, they're gonna make me do time. And I said, hey man, no verdict has come back yet. But in my heart, I knew.
Yeah.
And they said they had a verdict. So we rushed back. And Detective Schaefer, who was one of the detectives who investigated this, he gave me the middle finger in the courtroom. And I was, my the attorney out of Birmingham, Tom Larkin, he knew where my temper could go. He said, no, you're going to leave the courtroom. He said, you're going to go and leave right now. And you're going to go get yourself together. He said, because you're going to let them mess you up, and it's gonna take away from the character of Mr. Cosby. Because if you get out here and fight, or you got here and get too emotional, you lose who you are. Yeah. But I'm like, man, but I'm human. You know, like, he just gave me the middle finger. I know what they're about to do to him. And he was like, it's the system. That's what you've been talking about, the system. He said, so you got to beat them at the system. And I thought about it. I said, well, man, it took a while for me to get myself together. Because it just takes a minute, man. You know, when you're in that moment, And I don't like to lose, man. I don't like to lose. Yeah. But I'm not a sore loser. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem with jealousy. I have a problem with envy. Mm-hmm. No, because it's okay to be jealous of your opponent, to say, all right, I want to be jealous of him so I could go practice harder and be better than him next time, or her. Yeah. So jealousy is not a bad thing, because that could give you a different grind to say, this is what I'm gonna work on my skill sets to be great at whatever I'm trying to be great at. The envy is the stuff I don't like. Right. Like, I don't have a problem with a person using the person. We all get used for something. Somebody used us to do this. Just don't misuse me. And when he did that to me, I knew, and they came back with a guilty verdict. And that's when Mr. Cosby did lose his cool in the courtroom, and the district attorney said, I want him remanded into custody now. He's a flight risk. And the judge said, well, he hasn't left. We've been going through this trial for 2 years. The judge acting like as if he want to be fair now. Right. And Mr. Cosby, he said, he has a plane, and online it says, and we know it's more than that, but online it says net worth is $400 million. And Mr. Cosby said, I ain't got no damn plane, fool. You know, because we had sold the planes. They were 30 plus years old. And we get back to the house, man, and Mrs. Cosby, I told her, and he was, he said, Andrew, I'm telling you, they're gonna put me in prison, man. And he said, we'll start. He had just buried his daughter, who died 2 months before the trial, Insa. And she had renal failure. And he said, I'm going to start preparing myself. And that happened on a Friday, the guilty verdict. Saturday, I'm staying in the guest house. He said, I want to see you, Andrew. I come to the main house. He's lying on the sofa in the sitting room. He said, okay, they're going to put me in the iron box. He said, but you're going to have to figure out how to tell my story now. He said, because they're going to try to make me die here. He said, and this is going to be their attempt to murder me. And he said, this is the way they assassinate us. And what's so interesting about this prison is named SCI Phoenix now, but it was called Graterford. And what's so interesting, in 1970, he did a documentary with his friends in Graterford. And now he's about to go into this prison. And he decides he's not going to do a sentencing memorandum. He's not going to bring people in to plead his case, to talk about his character. And when September came, man, Mr. Cosby, he said, let me tell you something, man. He said, we had breakfast together every morning. I'll go work out at 3 a.m, and we have breakfast together at 5. And I'm an early riser anyway, so that's why I do. And that morning we had breakfast together. He said, hey, man, it'll be our last time having breakfast together for a while. Damn. He said, they're going to give me time, man. And I said, nah, Mr. C. I said, man, look, you're 80-something years old. He's not going to give you no time. It's no way. Why would he do that? I said, they are going to label you a sexual violent predator where you can't be around your grandchildren or any children. They said that he was a terror to the community, that he could get out and start raping women and drugging them. Wow. Blind. And that's what and when they got to the courthouse, man, we sat there, waited, and the judge threw the book at him. And it was a death sentence. And he never lost his cool or edge. He smiled. And I'm sitting there, because when he was found guilty, I had to go back to that in my mind, because we were all emotional, man. Right. And you can't help it being. I don't mind saying, as a man, I was just emotional because, you put your life into this, man. And I literally, I tell everybody, man, when I believe in something, I believe in a person's innocence, and I'm out here, I interject my life into this. I become a part of that situation. I'm going through it with you and your family. I'm going to use my money to keep the family afloat, because you're in it. When you're in it with a person, you're family now. Right. Like, we're in this together. And I went back to that moment where he told me if anybody was crying, to get rid of them. He said, because, man, this is the real fight. And I went back to that moment. So when they sentenced him to 3 to 10 years, I said, Mr. C, I gotta take it out. Give me your tie, give me your bracelet. And he made a joke. They want my tie. What they think I'm gonna hang myself? I said, well, they're gonna take your shoelaces too, and all that. He said, not my shoelaces. The only thing he was concerned about was cold showers, because one of the attorneys joked with him and said, man, they do cold showers. He said, I don't want no cold shower, man. That's all he was concerned about, cold shower. But he prepared himself over that summer, man. He started giving up certain foods. He prepared himself for what prison was going to be like. He started giving up certain things in life. When they put that ankle bracelet on him, he stayed in Philly, his Philly home, and he prepared himself mentally for it. And I walked him to the offices, and he said, hey, this is the last time you're going to get to walk me. He said, but when you go out there today, he said, listen, Mungo Slade, Sharp Eye Washington, those are the characters for Uptown Saturday Night, because Richard Pryor plays Sharp Eye Washington. We joke with each other about that. He said, give it to them. Give it to them. And I had met with Farrakhan Pryor before he was sentenced. Farrakhan said, look, Brother Bill sponsored all of the buses for the Million Man March.
Wow.
He said, we don't want nothing from Brother Bill. He said, but Brother Bill will be protected. They're going to put him in. He said, I'm telling you, they're going to put him in there. But Brother Bill don't have to worry about a thing, and he owes the nation nothing. He said, because he's done for the nation and the world more than we should have done for him. We didn't do for him the way he did for us. We didn't stand by him. And I remember Farrakhan's words. And Mr. Cosby said, look, man, I'm going to be okay. And I went out and I gave the speech of a lifetime. He said, look, you got to take care of my wife now. And you gotta be in this fight with my wife. And Mrs. Cosby has ran the show from day one, man. We'll be on the phone all day, and we always talk every night at 11 o'clock when she's swimming. She goes swimming, and he built an Olympic-sized pool at the Massachusetts property and around his cars, man. And she swims at night. We'll talk to 2 a.m, and we'll come up with plans. She was like, okay, Mr. Wyatt, what do you want to do now? What's the new plan? I said, well, we're going to do this. I flew in every day, man. I would fly in. His skin started breaking open when he was in prison, and he didn't have lotion. And Mrs. Cosby, she said, can you get some stuff into him? I said, Mrs. C, I got in with some correctional officers. Matter of fact, I'm dating one of them. I started making, I'll fly in, man, every other week to Philly. And I'll put tea tree oil together, lavender oil together, put a lotion together, let it soak overnight. And, man, I put it in my waistband in Ziploc bags. And, man, they always gave me a private room with him. So he'll lotion up, man. And I did that. And he could spend 3 hours with me. We only spent 45 minutes together. Wow. And he'll tell me how he would channel Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela would tell him how he was in Robben Island. They would give him a tin cup with porridge in there. And for breakfast, they would put a piece of sugar cube in the middle of the porridge. He'd eat around it. And he'd say the sugar cube, that would be his dessert. And then for lunch, they give him the same tin cup with porridge. And they will put a piece of broccoli in there. He'll eat around the broccoli, and that would be his vegetable. He'll say the vegetable. Then for dinner, They'll give him that same 10-cup of porridge. They'll put a piece of fat back in the middle, just a little piece of meat. He'll eat around that. That'll be his protein. So what Cosby did, he would take all his food and put it under the sink in the prison and wash it off. Just to get the salt. He said, look, man, they're trying to make my blood pressure go up and stuff like that. They're trying to knock me off. He said, I know what they're trying to do to me. And he would rinse it off. And then they started telling him he couldn't rinse his food off. You know, you can't rinse your food off. And he would rinse his eggs off. And he would just eat them. He would put them in a cup, man. And he would eat them after he gets shaked up in the cup and get the salt off. And then I visited him and I always said, man, the creator, man, knows what he's doing. We might not understand. And when I visited him, since he's blind, he can't see. His eyes were bloodshot red. And I called Mrs. Cosby. I said, something ain't right. And he couldn't get his pressure down. And I called the prison and I told the warden, so let me tell you something. I will have cameras out here. If something happened to him, if you don't get him to a doctor and they found out that his carotid arteries on the left and right side had 90% blockage each due to plaque buildup, and they cleaned them out, if it wasn't for prison saved his life. That saved his life because he went in knowing he had blockage but never told anyone because he loved his pizza, cheese, steaks, hoagies, and that kind of stuff. And